Hello, everyone. This is Luca Majno. We're back with Frank Gregory Ford, coughing Gregory Ford today in this case. This is Global News Update on TLV TV, courtesy of the Liberty Beacon Project, where we give you complete backstage and up-to-date info as to the developments occurring in our world today. Greg, that doesn't sound too good.
Well, I'm doing my best for this show as always, but you know, I got this for a good cause. It was Barbara Honegger's 70th birthday and the banquet that went with it.
There you go.
Pretty decent luminaries that went along with it. So, and it was a really rewarding banquet. Okay, so.
Well, you want to remind our listeners just very quickly again where you got this cough from?
Okay, well, you know, let me see. The first phase of it, I got from the vaccine, you know, that I had to receive, courtesy of Donald Rumsfeld and the Department of Defense. I've had this cough just always on the edge the last 15 years as a result, and it was enhanced when I was undergoing a torture interrogation process when I was renditioned, and that was a result of MK Ultra drugs. So this thing is always right underneath the surface, really just waiting to pounce on me. So, you know, that's what I get for serving my country for 30 years, for 3 decades, is I get this. So that's why I say, mothers, fathers, don't send your children, you know, off to the military and off to war. This is what happens to them. If your children are taught right and you raise them correctly, they will be forced to do bad things for the kleptocracy, okay, that's running the world. And a funny thing is at this banquet, I had to run the whole idea of copper green down to virtually everybody there. And the fury that I saw from some of the top civil defense and human rights lawyers was outrage. It was one of outrage. And by the way, Dan Sheehan, does that ring a bell to you, Luca? It does? Okay, I lost your audio there.
Yeah, it does. Dan Sheehan, you were saying. Absolutely, yes.
Right. Well, he was supposed to have been there, but it turns out that he was in North Dakota, and the government is now prosecuting several of the Native American Lakota Sioux for the protests that they put up with. He is there right now as we speak. So, and I got that from Sarah, okay, Sarah Sheehan, all right? So, you know, but Dan is looking forward to what I have to tell him about the Copper Green program. And I think I've told our listeners what the Copper Green program is.
Several times, yes.
Yes, right. Okay, good. Okay, my friend. So what do we have now for Snapshot?
Well, today I really wanted to focus on the difference between us and them. Why they're like that. How can it be? How can you be desensitized is the word that I'm looking for, Greg, and I want to share screens with you on this one too, once again. And I want to start Snapshot with this, because they've been warning for hundreds of years. We warned you of that day that you'd not be able to control what you have created. That day is here. And this is exactly what's going on. It's no joke, and they know it, and that's part of the prophecies, right?
Absolutely.
The WAMPUM. The what? You know, most people don't understand what the WAMPUM is, and I just want to run this by you guys, or you guys and girls, right? As you can see, the address is on the bottom of the screen. The WAMPUM belt on YouTube, a nation-to-nation relationship. These wampum come from a shell called the Quahog, and it was mostly found on the eastern coast with the Wampanoag tribe, the Narragansett, and so on. And the women would take something like a day and a half to 2 days to cut out and drill through one bead. That's how long it took. It was tremendous work. They took the purple parts from the Quahog and the Quahog shell and stripped it and worked it, and this is what they ended up with. And ironically, the Europeans, they give the Native Americans that they find there the wampum belt. In other words, telling them, we promise friendship, we promise under the eyes of God to be good to each other as long as we, the Europeans, can settle and have a right to peace. And there was never a problem with the Indian. But when the Indian turned around and saw how easily they broke every single treaty, because that's what it was. It was, giving the wampum belt, swearing under the wampum belt, or doing that in the presence of the wampum belt was like talking on, right before God in the white man's church, whatever you want to say it. And that was a ceremony. And the fact that they just neglected their word was just something they couldn't understand. The Native Americans just were baffled with that. This is from the movie The Revenant, which I thought was very appropriate. On est tous des sauvages in French, which means we are all Indians. And this was an Indian that was really, really good to the guy you can see in the background who was trying to save his own life and managed to help him. And, he walks up a few feet away from where they were in the camp and finds this one morning. So it makes you think, because we all are today the Indians of the 21st century. Okay, this little ditty right here we have to talk about, because this picture here was originally posted by my friend Anthony on social media. It tells of the excruciating abuse of power used to ridicule, shame, and humiliate children into submission. Children, okay, on a daily occurrence. This was a daily occurrence at the schools, at the prisons, in both countries, North and South, on this continent. It is my belief also that this attitude, this self-proclaimed racial divide, made it easier to mistreat, abuse in every way, shape, or form the Indian children forced to be in these places. Okay, here they're forced in this picture to replay what the white people, or what their masters would call, a caricature-style mocking. That's the oppressor's view of what dressing Indian looks like, making them purposely dress up like that and ridicule their own. But it shows the callousness that's learned by church and state, this sort of shark skin developed by the people that ran these schools, so as to be desensitized as much as possible, removed as much as possible. Okay, and in this next picture, exactly the same thing. This is why I wanted to bring this up, because this is the incredible effectiveness of brainwashing and desensitizing the troops. And what comes to mind right off the top is Obama literally asking the question, as we spoke of in the last show, to his higher-ups, would you fire on American citizens? Okay, think about it. So it's like desensitizing people. It's the key to having them make it, do a job that, the elites simply don't want to do. And if you look at the New World Order, the book, this came out in 1989, apparently, this book here, and it says, look in the middle of the page. They talk about the family, they talk about the workplace and religion, exactly the way it's coming along as we speak. This is what they want. They want to push homosexuality and marriages. They want to take the right and the power away from the parents. It's, it goes on and on. So be my guest and please put this on pause so you can see it a bit more. Greg, you asked me why I don't watch MSM. I don't watch CNN for the same reason I don't eat out of the toilet. And I hope he's laughing. I hope he's coughing because he's laughing at that one.
No, I'm wondering about that one photo. You called him a soldier.
Yes.
And the schoolgirl shot in the head.
Yes.
In the background.
Right.
I think that's an Israeli policeman. Yes, I don't think it's a soldier.
Yeah, I believe it is. Yes, I believe it is. Hollywood mingles with the CIA, or should I say it the other way around? The CIA mingles with Hollywood. It's really interesting, as we saw on the last show. We spoke about how the CIA kind of, helps pave the way for certain people to write books.
Yes.
for movies. This is a really good example. I found this morning on social media. I could not resist. We were talking about Tom Clancy and how the CIA got him killed because he was coming too close to stuff that was real. Again, I want to reiterate this. I want to talk about 9/11 real quick. If the government and the media are lying to us about 9/11, it means they are controlled by the same people who carried out 9/11. So it's not Obama's fault. It's not Rockefeller's fault. It's not, you can't blame one person. They're all puppets for their puppet masters up on top. Of course, it is their fault, but they're not the real culprits. They're not the people that are really doing the damage, so to speak. Right here, I have to say this. I have to take this line by line because it's very important. It goes something like this, okay? When you do your research on 9/11 and who was involved, the words in this picture could be answered this way, okay? First line, we come here to remember those who were killed. And I'm like, right, by your own government, in collusion with Israel and Saudi Arabia, and the real slap in the face is that Israel designed and built this memorial, okay? Line 2, those who survived and were changed forever. Yeah, simply because of unbelievable audacity and criminality of all this, everyone will be changed forever now, knowing from here on in that our own government is responsible for all these false flags. See, the story changes quite a bit when you read it out like that. Next line, may all who leave here know the impact of violence. Give me a freaking break. The ones who did this are the ones writing this. The CIA is the ultimate destabilizer in this world. And we know now who are behind these heinous crimes, the killing of their own people. If anyone knows the impact of violence, that there is, it's the people behind the crimes. So in shooting off the last one, I really had to put some heart into it because it really, really got me upset. May this memorial offer comfort, strength, peace, hope, and serenity. Those words at the end, they serve two purposes. One is to see how the perpetrators are cold, callous, and lying bastards, like Greg likes to talk about George H.W. Bush, and how this is only the beginning of their own terrorizing of their own populations. And two, we can use all these words at the end to help us awaken souls to see just how blessed we are to know what the truth is. Okay? And the next picture, it shows Bibi with a smile on his face. Yeah, you know why? Because Israel benefited. Israel benefited. And Greg, we have to remember what he said. Thanks to Christopher Boland. I didn't know this before, but a few years ago, it came to pass what he actually said. He said, quote, we are benefiting from one thing, and that is the attack on the Twin Towers and the Pentagon and the American struggle in Iraq. So, but please, don't believe what we post on here, what we show on this show. Research it. Research what we share. In my last segment on Snapshot, I had to talk about him, and he has a nickname. He's called Low Life Scum. Okay, that's what I call him. After the day that Code Pink came in and tried to do a citizen's arrest of Kissinger, which almost worked. And I started thinking about him this morning when I saw that, because I saw this post. The U.S. created Al-Qaeda to destroy countries without even having to tell anyone. And this is probably the best example of it, Greg. I have never seen anything as disgraceful and outrageous and despicable. Yeah, well, neither have we. Look at Vietnam. Neither have we. Prosecute war criminals and end the U.S. culture of impunity now. Huh? I thought that was pretty good.
If I might say so, you can see on the special by Ken Burns, who did the Vietnam War. I didn't realize this bottom picture that shows the little girl with her clothes burned off by napalm. Yeah. That was a whole sequence that shows a U.S. plane coming in, intentionally dropping napalm on the entire village. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the smoke in the background, these are the only survivors right there
Yeah.
running out of the smoke.
Yeah.
Okay. You can see what kind of shape they're in. All right. That was one of the most horrifying things I think I've ever seen right there.
Yeah. And we pay honor to things like this every time we research them. Okay. Another one you might want to pause on is what he thinks about war. If it resonates with you, okay, and you do your research and you come up with exactly the same thing in 3 or 4 different places, you know that it's true. Okay. These are the people that are creating the wars. These are the people that are creating the upsets. I could argue with George Galloway here, Greg, because I do think I think the Bush family is probably the worst. He says that Henry Kissinger is probably the greatest living war criminal in the world today. So I kind of laughed at that because I said to myself, he's probably a close second to Bush, I imagine.
Oh, goodness. Let me see. What does that say? With blood of millions of people from Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos,
Laos, and Chile,
Chile,
and East
East
Timor.
Timor. Okay. You know, I know virtually somebody from every one of those countries that either has died or was wounded horribly or has come back and they're suffering massive PTSD from what went on in each one of those countries.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the last one, East Timor, I I had a very good friend from Australia who was training as the National Guard there on East Timor. He went back. What was it? 3 months later, and he had trained several hundred troops, and there wasn't a single troop left alive.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you know, if you remember what East Timor was about, it was so who's Starbucks coffee? Okay. It was so Starbucks could have slave labor, cheap labor to produce their coffee so everyone in America could drink a nice overpriced cup of coffee from Java. All right. That's what that resulted in thousands and thousands of people on East Timor being wiped out to the last person. That's what I remember from East Timor in Cambodia and Laos and Vietnam. You know what they didn't tell you about Vietnam is Vietnam actually required, had something called wolfram, okay? And wolfram, it was a steel hardener. They'll never speak about this, but that was the only place in the whole world where you could get titanium, you know, from steel and the wolfram involved. That and of course, who do you think knew about that? LBJ and his buddies.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so they weren't about. You know, we keep saying, "Oh yeah, well, we wanted to make a whole lot of money off of Vietnam. And that's why Johnson went over there." No, we needed the wolfram from Vietnam to strengthen the titanium steel, and that was the only way we could get it. And instead of just paying them for it, paying the Vietnamese for it, we went over there to kill them and bomb them and just take it. They will never, you know, and that's the only way that they could get it. But it's also they didn't want to simply pay. They'd rather send 18-year-olds over there to get shot, stabbed, tortured, blown up, murdered, and then have them do the same to the poor Vietnamese who'd never done anything to us.
Exactly. See, Greg, this reminds me also of what we talked about, and actually what this is about, this show here. It's all about, you know, showing and exposing what's going on in the real world and how people can just be so callous. Last time you were talking about the Las Vegas shooting being done by helicopter from the floor of the helicopter with a belt-driven machine gun, and I have a picture here showing the same thing with the doors slid open from Vietnam. So you know, it's hard to imagine people that can do things like that to their own people. Very quickly to close Snapshot, I have a saying for people because I want it to be a positive ending. If you don't make the time to work on creating the life that you want, you're eventually going to be forced to spend a lot of time dealing with the life you don't want. And that was for me before I started doing this, because I was terrified of radio, absolutely terrified, and I couldn't wrap my head around me speaking live. Are you kidding? You know? And it's something that I really had to fight with for quite a while. So here we are. And I'm really, really glad to do this with a sneezing partner.
Well, believe me, I am miserable. All right. Now, with this group of people I had at the banquet, okay, a few hours ago, they were thrilled to hear about the show, Luca, and you should start seeing our numbers start to double, because we're going to be transferred over to their networks. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to start appearing on their networks also. Good. To expand, right? So some of the best people in this protection business you can imagine. Okay. So yeah, that's as a result of that banquet I went on. And I was hacking and coughing the whole time there too, by the way.
And I just want to remind people. I just want to remind people, between coughs, like skipping and jumping between coughs, what this really is. Okay, this is our government, and we're talking DUs. We're talking the deliberate use of depleted uranium-238. Okay, this is one person you can go check out, Doug Roke, very quickly, Rokke, and he talks about the 350 tons of depleted uranium munitions that we used in the Gulf War alone. I'm not going to start talking about this because we'll never finish the show on time, because Greg will go ape with this, because I can imagine how I feel like going ape with this. But this is our poisoning of our own people that you're looking at right over here on this show. Mm-hmm. You're living proof that this is what the agenda is, and they don't care. So maybe on future shows we can get closer on talking about how they will fire on U.S. citizens and how they are trying to instill this type of fear and horror, so that people will just give up their guns and say, okay, government, do what you want to do, which will never happen. Well,
we're very close to that now, Luca.
Yeah, I think so.
Now, by the way, I mentioned the other day that I feel that the president has signed his own death warrant by not releasing all those records. Okay, he needs to understand that those CIA records, okay, and surprisingly, most of them are complete as far as I can tell. But the thing is those are the only things that are keeping him alive. And if you don't think so, compare, okay, Donald Trump, okay, compare our sitting president to JFK, all right? They have a lot of comparisons, okay? First of all is that, yes, they are draining the swamp, attempting to straighten out Washington, all right? They're both wealthy. They were both extremely wealthy, okay? And they are going up against big oil interests, okay? Big oil interest. And then on top of everything else, before I drove back from Monterey today, I heard that, Robert Mueller, okay, has now announced there's going to be indictments in the Trump administration, okay? Right. All right. Now, you posted that. You have, that shows, what you posted shows that Robert Mueller knew absolutely, completely, and toto about the war crimes that were going on by the Bush family. And in a closing note, you can ask anybody on the show, how many times do you think Robert Mueller contacted me and asked for elaboration on the information that I was giving about the torture and abuse of Iraqis? Mm-hmm. Zero. I'll answer it for you, folks. Zero. So as a result, we are going to see the same situation that JFK had on his hands. Okay. And what happened to him? He got his head blown off, okay, on the orders of George H.W. Bush. And the only thing that has kept Trump alive is the fact that the Bush family, okay, never expected him to be elected. And secondly, Mr. Bush, when he gave that order to release those records, never expected to be alive. Okay. That was 25 years ago. All right. So you can bet Mr. Bush isn't going to go down. Okay. You know, go meet his maker. Okay. With Donald Trump at the helm. He just won't do it. All right. Isn't that amazing? Here we have a country where the most notable achievement it's been able to make is that one president kills another president, which kills another president. Okay,
that's about it.
That's what we have. LBJ, who killed Kennedy, and then we find out that our past president George H.W. Bush was sitting right there working with that one president, LBJ. Boy, what a hazardous piece of business it is to be a president in this country. All right. Think about that, because this president has now signed his death warrant. And as I've said, the Las Vegas shooting was actually the first announcement of that. That's what we have, the first announcement, okay, of Gladio C. And it will probably result in the death of Donald Trump. Okay. That's all I see. That's all I know. History repeats itself in a very straightforward fashion, okay? All right, so, and these people, they only work a certain way. They always work a certain way. Yeah. And they're not like us. The rich are different than us, but these rich are probably the most virile, you know, okay, as in wild animals, and they are the most dangerous because they don't know any different. We're talking a multi-generational DNA programmed group of people that can't behave any other way than what they do, what they are. Okay, and you think I'm joking? You think I'm erroneous in this assumption? Well, look at the Bush family. Hey, there it is. From Samuel Bush in World War I, selling all the weapons to American troops, to Prescott Bush being a Nazi, a full-fledged member of the SS Nazi. Okay, there he is. I had to explain this last night to several people. All right, and point out the fact that virtually World War II was a Bush construct. Okay, so here we are here. All right, so.
Well, Greg, you know what? You actually said something that's really important to end the show off. You said that history repeats itself. You know what? I learned that I had to get away from that kind of thinking because everybody thinks that everybody tends to go down that road. History repeats itself because nobody learned anything. It's exactly the opposite. They didn't want to learn anything because they're not interested in learning anything. What they want to do is learn how to make the same thing happen that they did better. So
right,
it's not about learning the lesson. It's about learning how to make it better, how to kill more people, more.
And just to make sure they don't have any. Well, just to make sure they don't have any troublemakers growing up and start putting this all together.
Right.
What do? They develop their own educational program called Leave No Child Behind. All right. And what that does, they make sure that basically each generation produces a bunch of boneheads. All right. Boneheads that can't read or write. And little do they know that when they register for this program, okay, in high school, junior high, okay, guess what? They have registered their own personal IDs, and that's how they can come up with the number of people for each war that they want to fight, okay? And by the way, if you think Obama was so wonderful, so great, all right, you know, who followed on to Bush, he was just a little quieter about it, okay? I found out today 8 of the 12 wars that we have, okay, were started boots on ground, kick everybody's ass, okay, throw grenades, set explosives, high-tech weapons, the whole bit. Eight separate wars were started under Obama. Okay.
Yeah.
Are we still in Afghanistan? Yes. Are we still in Iraq? Yes. Are we in Syria?
Yes. Can we stay in Iraq for another 50 years? Because there's so many nice minerals underneath the ground. You wouldn't believe it. I'll show you later.
Oh yeah, Afghanistan is now, with lithium, it is now in the same status as Saudi Arabia is with oil. All right.
Yeah.
You think we're going to leave Afghanistan or Saudi Arabia? Forget it. Okay. No. In the next few weeks, we're going to see something pretty horrendous, folks. I can tell you that. All right. I know this whole cycle, and every single one of the people that think enough to listen to the show knows the cycle too. It's not going to change. And guess what? We've got a great big problem headed our way. All right. So if we can educate, if we can, enlighten, and if we can lead, if we can go together on changing just a small sector of our society, that is a major roadblock to this programmed destruction that we have. So anyway, that's my take on it. Sorry for all the coughing and sneezing and snorting. Okay. I have a miserable cold, folks. It's probably from all the chemtrails, is what I'm thinking.
Probably, yeah.
But anyway, looking forward to the next show. And by the way, has anybody realized all the revelations about the Las Vegas shooting? That's funny. That it's come quite a long ways from lone wolf crazy. Okay. Oh wait, what did George H.W. Bush say about Oswald? A deranged gunman. Ha ha ha. Okay.
Oh yeah, right. And then there's AOL that's posting this picture saying, Oswald made a final phone call that you have to hear before killing Kennedy.
Right.
Anyway, so we'll talk again, and I hope I hope your cough will get better. And it's always an honor, Greg. Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Thank you for everybody. Thank you, Luca.